What's going on, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of my favorite Solar Titan builds in the game right now that revolves around the exotic Synthocept. Synthocept's exotic perk reads as follows: Biotic Enhancements. Increased melee lunge range, improve melee and super damage when you are surrounded. So essentially, this build is going to be revolving around the Bonk hammer, and this build is so much fun to just get up in the mix with enemies, throwing your hammer at people. You're going to be getting a lot of damage with those hammers. I have been able to solo Legend Lost sectors in under 2 minutes with this build because of how easy it is. You don't even have to shoot a weapon in those lost sectors. Now, before we get into the build here, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new here. I appreciate each and every one of you stopping by the video. Without further ado, though, let's get into the build. In our subclass here, we're going to be rocking with the Hammer of Soul. You could run the Beyblade Burning Maul if you want. This is just a personal preference. For our barricade here, I like to run Towering Barricade. However, you could run Rally Barricade if you want as well. The movement ability is, again, personal preference. I like Catapult Lift. Our melee, though, you want Throwing Hammer. This is basically all you're going to want to do. An interesting thing that works with the hammer, if you throw it at a target and hit one, and then you pick it up, you get Cure. For our nade here, we're going to be running Solar Nades. This is my favorite nade to run on the Solar subclass if I'm not running Fusion Nades. For our aspects here, we're going to be starting off with Roaring Flames. Final blows with solar abilities or ignitions increase the damage of your solar abilities, which stacks up to 3 times. And while Roaring Flames is active, your uncharged melee attack deals solar damage and scorches targets. So basically, with our Bonk hammer, we're going to be getting our ×3 Roaring Flame stacks very fast. And even if you throw your hammer and you have to go chase it down, which we all know our Titans have to do that, you can punch something and do solar damage as well as scorch targets as well. Our second aspect here is Soul Invictus. Solar ability Final Blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, and defeating scorched targets creates sunspots. Your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly while standing in one of those sunspots. Your sunspots also apply scorch and deal damage to targets inside, and when you enter a sunspot, you get restoration. Because of this aspect right here, you are able to live so long because you are just going to be constantly standing in your sunspots if you're in the face of enemies, throwing your Bonk hammer at those enemies, killing them, dropping a sunspot on the spot, and then you're going to stand in it, restoration. And then you're also going to be killing ads inside that without even throwing your hammer because they're going to be scorched and dying inside. Moving on to our fragments here, we're going to be starting off with the Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies radiant. So anytime you throw your hammer and hit an enemy or kill them, you're going to be radiant from that. Our second fragment here is going to be Ember of Char. Your solar ignition spreads scorch to affected targets. So anytime you ignite an enemy, you're going to be spreading scorch around your enemies. Next up is the Ember of Searing, which is defeating scorched targets grants melee energy. So anytime you defeat a scorched target, you can get your hammer back if you for some reason decide to throw it off the map, which we've all done as a Solar Titan. You also get a boost to recovery, which is nice. And then lastly, our fragment here is going to be Ember of Ashes, which means you apply more scorch stacks to targets, which is perfect if an enemy walks into your sunspot. They're going to be gaining more scorch from it. Now, when it comes down to the weapons you're using, you want to have as much solar weaponry as possible. If you want to have 3, you could run a weapon with Osmosis, which allows you to have a kinetic solar weapon thanks to Osmosis, which anytime you throw a grenade, it will make that weapon solar. However, some recommendations I have for the energy slot would be something like Callus Mini Tool, as Incandescent is one of our best perks for solar in the game. You could also run a solar wave frame, a solar fusion rifle like Cartesian Coordinate. Anything that's solar is what you're going to be wanting to run. In the heavy slot, you got things like Cataclysmic, you got things like Galahorn, you got things like Ascendancy. There are so many different weapons you can pair with this build. Now, if we go take a look at the mods on our armor here, on our helmet, we're going to be running Melee Wellmaker, as any kill we get with our Bonk hammer is going to spawn an elemental well. On our gauntlets, we got Font of Might, so anytime we pick up one of those solar elemental wells, we're going to be gaining a damage increase to our solar weapons, which is why we want to run as many solar weapons as possible. On our chest, we're going to have another Melee Wellmaker. The reason is because we're going to be running Bountiful Wells on our Titan mark here. The way Bountiful Wells works is elemental well mods that cause you to spawn elemental wells can now stack, spawning additional wells for each additional copy of the mod you have equipped. On our boots here, we're going to be running Well of Life, and what that does is anytime you pick up a solar elemental well, you're going to be gaining an increase to your regen. So you're going to be constantly regenning even if you aren't in a sunspot because of these elemental wells. Overall, this build is a blast to use. You can do so much with it. You can solo some of the end game content such as Legend Lost sectors with this. You can do a ton with this build. You're going to be always in the mix, throwing your hammer at enemies. Just make sure you don't throw it too far and throw it off the map like we've all done before. But if you enjoyed the build here, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below if you've tried this build out before or if you're going to give this a try now. I appreciate you guys making it to the end of the video here. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.